Hello everyone and welcome to Gallery Teachers Masterclass. My name is Olga and today we'll be talking about effective teaching with minimum or zero preparation materials. My first question in this workshop is how much time do you spend on preparing a lesson? Usually if you're a newly qualified teacher, it's about 1 hour. It's okay if you have this time, but what if you work as a substitute teacher? What if you're on a standby and you don't know which class you're teaching or which you're going to teach and who you're going to substitute? Or if you plan a brilliant lesson, but your photocopier broke down. Or when you go to school, there's no electricity and your internet doesn't work. So in this case, it's a good idea to have a list of emergency activities that you can use in any class and that can be effective. These activities should serve and should help you to minimize your preparation time and maximize student involvement. In order to do that, we have different things to keep in mind. So the first one is, of course, your activities should be focused on the student. So make sure that whatever you do in class is involving, and it involves the students first of all. The language, when the language comes from the students, they are more responsive to it and they like it more and they're more satisfied with the lesson. So the second one is exploit your background knowledge, exploit everything you know about your culture, about your the area where you live, and the games, for example, that you love. If you know a specific word game or language game that is working perfectly in your L1, use it in your English class, and you'll be surprised how the students will enjoy it, right? And of course, each activity needs to have some sort of language value. So think about like what vocabulary can be taught with this activity, what functional language can be taught with this activity, how can we use it so that maybe there is enough grammar to teach, or maybe the students will benefit from learning some functional language of playing different games, and that will be really, really helpful. Let's have a look at some word games that we can use either as warmers or at the end of the lesson when you have 5 minutes to spare, and that make your lessons more interesting for the students. The first activity is very easy. I'm sure you know it. It's when you put the word on the board and ask the students to make as many words as possible using the letters of these words. You're not allowed to use the same letter twice, so they need to be creative to do that. To make it more fun, you can divide the students into 2 groups and make it as a competition and make your own rules. Maybe the team that has the longest list can win, or the team which has the longest word can win. So it's up to you. And then the students can come up with different words like this. All right. The second activity that you can use with words is word associations. So you can start writing one word on the board. For example, the word summer. And then you can ask another student, okay, Maria, so what do you think of when I write, when you look at the word summer? Like, Maria may say beach. All right. So then, Andrew, what do you think when you hear the word beach? So he said, oh, sand. And then go on. And then another person can say sea. So what do you associate sea with? Holidays, holidays with school, school with books, books with pictures, pictures with gallery with teachers. It can work like this. And you may have, you can have several rounds if you have a smaller group, so that you can have maybe the whole board filled in with words. But make sure that you put them in the right order, so in the order that you ask the students. The next thing you do, you delete everything, and then they say, okay, so let's have a look. So what was the last word that we wrote down, and then the students start remembering what they had, so like what they've written down. So like teachers, what do you associate teachers with? What was before teachers? Gallery. What was before gallery? Pictures. But before pictures, books. Before books, schools. And all, like you can work it like you can work like this. That helps to create the chain of associations, and such chain could help to trigger the students, the students' associations, of course, and the memory, and helps them to memorize the words better. As you can see, the words are coming from the students, the learners are involved, and you can start it with, it can be a very good warmer at the beginning of the lesson. So you can start, like if you know that you're going to talk about holidays, you can write down the holidays, what do you associate holidays with? And the students will be ready by the end of this activity to talk about holidays. That's one thing. Another thing that is beneficial of this activity is that like at the end of it, the students will be really, really happy to see how many words they managed to remember. And all these words can be different. So that's another benefit of it. Right. So the next thing that we can do is categorizing. We have a very good activity in Russian, for example, when we write different categories on a piece of paper, like name, city, fruit, vegetable, animal, and then another, like one person says alphabet silently to himself, and another person needs to say stop in the middle, and then whatever letter it is. So you have to write as quickly as possible. So the name that starts with the same letter, the city that starts with the same letter, the fruit, the animal, or vegetable. Oh, that vegetable, interesting spelling. All right, so that's for example, if the letter is L, you have like Lena is the name, city is London, fruit is fruit can be lemon, animal can be lime, vegetable can be lettuce. So you can start like this. So, and the first person who finishes fast so the first person who finishes this is the winner. All right, or we have all the words. Right. Another thing is back to the board activity that probably a lot of you are familiar with. The reason why I decided to include it is because very often we forget to use it, right? Or we forget that we have it, and we forget that we still can use it. So it's just a reminder, right? It's a very simple activity when you have one student in front of with the back to the board, and then you can write a word, for example, on the board, and the rest of the group needs to explain this word to the student without saying it. It's quite challenging, so that they can use any language at their demand, at their hand, so what they have, and then the student need to guess this word. But to make it more challenging, you can actually say the whole sentence. So you can you can write the whole sentence, and you'll be surprised what the students will be like, which words the students will be using to express different words in this sentence. So they can use gestures, they can use definitions, they can use like here with it's a pronoun, or it's a personal pronoun. It's not my father but my mom. Okay, something like that. And it's so they can at some point they can even use articles, or it's a definite article, it's an indefinite article, something like that. So it's really helpful for the students. It's interesting. It's entertaining for them, and it saves you a lot of preparation time. You can actually use the grammar sentence with the grammar structure that you're working on at the moment. And in this case, they have to, like, it was my habit in the past. Like I used to go for a walk, for example, every morning. So they have to describe it using the terminology, something like that. Okay. Another way of doing it is when you put two students and you divide the whole class into 2 teams, and you have 2 students in front of the board, and each team needs to explain the word to those 2 students, and the first one that guesses the word is the winner. All right. Another activity that I like a lot is called word slips. In this activity, you ask the students to write 5 different words on different slips of paper. They can select any words they want, and they can write. They're not limited to language, so they're not limited to whether they use only nouns, on the verbs, on the prepositions, anything they want. And then you have different types of activity that you can work with. So first of all, I usually divide it into several steps, this activity. So if the students are new to it, I ask them to work in pairs and explain these words to each other. And when they finish, they exchange these 5 words. Now I have my partner's 5 words. I know what they mean. I know the definition, or at least I remember the definition. Okay, and then I switch partners, so they go to the next person. With the new partners, when they work, they ask each other questions using the words they have. So now they think about the usage of this particular word. For example, if I have go for a walk, so I can ask a question, how often do you go for a walk? Or maybe a cat, do you have a cat? And your partner needs to answer this question in any order, so using any words, any phrases that he has. So he needs just to react to it. So this is a very simple activity, but this is something that we do in real life situation, because in communication we ask questions and we answer questions. So, and this is a very important skill for the students to work on. Right. The third step of this activity is mingling. So in the first 2 steps, I ask them to work in pairs, and then I change the pairs. In the third one is a mingling activity. And in this case, for example, I have my 5 words. My partner has his 5 words. And the trick here is that we need to ask the question using my word, but the partner needs to answer this question using one of his words. So he cannot or she cannot use only one word, or 3 words, only one word. For example, if I have these 5 questions, a detective, slowly, a cat, go for a walk. If I ask the question with the cat, for example, do you have a cat? I can answer, so my partner can answer, no, I don't, but my brother does. So in this case, we have cat and brother, and they exchange these slips of paper, because they fit perfectly, right? It makes sense. The conversation makes sense. They exchange their slips of paper and then move on to the new partner, right? So one question, one answer, exchange, and then move on to the new partner. In this case, they can talk to as many people as possible. So at least as 5 people, to 5 people. And then you can stop this activity if one person, for example, exchanged all his cards or her cards, or you can make it run a bit longer, because very often they do it quite fast. So you can do it, you can set the time limit, so you can give them 5 minutes, for example, to keep this activity running. Okay, so, and as you could see, the language comes from the students. So they use the words that they have. We worked very nicely at the very beginning. So like we scaffold this activity. We started with the simple activity as giving a definition, define what you have. And the second activity, ask a question and answer. So it's simple. But then like we make it more complex by asking a set of questions using these words and answering a set of questions using this word, like your words, right? It involves creativity, it involves fast reaction, and the element of surprise. And it usually is a lot of fun for the students. Okay, now when we have all these slips of paper, try not to throw them away, because with these slips of paper, you can have a vocabulary box. Put them in the box. Find a box. It can be small, it can be big, anything. So it can be plastic box. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Um, Label it as vocabulary box so that your students know that this is their vocabulary box, and put these slips of paper there. You can do this activity several times. You can ask the students, for example, to like when they read the text, write down some of the words that they would like to practice, they find interesting, and write them on separate slips of paper. And like in this case, by the end of the course, you'll be surprised how many words you have in this vocabulary box. And the students will be really happy, especially if you're teaching young learners, or if you're teaching teenagers, you'll say, okay, so look how many words we've learned so far. Okay. And also, it's a very nice resource, and you can use it in your lessons. For example, if you're waiting for some people to come, or you have like 2 or 3 learners coming early, have a look at vocabulary box. Give it, like, you can set any activity. So give a definition to each other. Guess my word. Give a definition. Let your partner guess the word. They can play back to the board, but a different variation. For example, if you can put 2 people sitting with their backs to the board, you can give them like a bunch of, like, you can put the vocabulary box between them, and then they need to explain. They need to take these slips of paper, and they need to explain these words to their group. Yes, and then you set the time limit of 1 minute, and you see how many words they manage to get through, right? And in this case, you can rotate. You can do it 2 or 3 times and see which team is the winner. So whether they manage to describe the words or not. It's a good motivation for students to learn these words. It's a good motivation for students to see how many, to see the achievement, right? And to revise the words as well. Another thing that you can do with it is, of course, it's to make a story, and you can do it in different ways. You can ask, students can work individually. You can ask them to just choose like 3 or 4 words from this box and make a story, and then the rest of the group can listen to this story and figure out which words they're using. Or they can make a collaborative story. Or you can make a collaborative story. First of all, you can do it like as a group, and you can do it as a chain story. So one person starts a story taking a slip of paper, like once upon a time there lived a cat, and then the second student say, okay, yes, and this cat lived in my brother's house. And then the third person can take another word, and like they continue, and they can do it like this. Or even with this story, they can add fortunately or unfortunately. You can start. So each student needs to start his story with either fortunately or unfortunately, and you may say, so fortunately, okay, once upon a time there lived a cat. Fortunately, he lived in my brother's house. Unfortunately, my brother didn't like this cat, so he found a flamingo or something like that. So it goes like this. You don't need to prepare it specifically for the lesson. So you can ask the students to come up with their words, the words that they know, and it will help you to create a learner-centered activity which requires 0 preparation. But it still will be beneficial for the students because they will be speaking, they will be cooperating with each other, so communicating with each other, and they will be practicing their vocabulary. The second thing that I wanted to focus on is exploiting what you know, exploiting your background knowledge on different games. And for example, we all know this game which is called like Battleships, right? You all or majority of you played it at home when you need to write down to arrange different shapes on the on your grid, and then you need to figure out where the shapes are. So what about A1, and then you say hit. Or if you say, okay, A2, you say miss, or something like that. So you need to find out all the shapes. Instead of shapes, you can use different vocabulary, and you can agree on how many words you have. You may have like 3 words with 3 letters, or like 2 words with 5 letters, 1 word with 6 letters, depending on the vocabulary that you are using. And then you can, like, students work in pairs and ask, like, try to figure out where the words are. And once they found the words, so they need to figure out which word is it. Another thing that is very useful when you use this game is the language that you use to play it. Because it's a popular game, it's played in English-speaking countries as well. So when the students know how to say it in English, like hit, miss, hit, and stunk. So in this case, it will be all like functional language that they can learn on how to play this game. Another very popular game is a bingo. It's, you all know this, it's like when you have the numbers, and you need to, like, you put the numbers on the board, on the grid, and then one person says the number, and another, if you have this number, you need to cross it out. It can work well with different vocabulary on different topics. You can ask the students to write the words on different topics, or you can work with grammar and, for example, the forms of irregular verbs. You can brainstorm different irregular verbs on the board, make sure that they're more than like 12, maybe 20 or something, and ask the students to write them down on the board. Fine. Then give them the grid, or ask them to draw a grid in their notepad, and write down 12 words. It's up to you which grid to choose. You can use 9 squares there, or 12 squares. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. But then you read out the word from the board, make them like in past simple, and they need to cross the words in the in present. For example, in the infinitive, for example, you say went, so they need to find the word go. So found, they need to find the word find in their grid. So it works. It is very helpful for the learners to remember like this irregular verbs, right? Like this. Okay, and at the same time to have fun in the lesson. Again, on your side, you don't need to prepare thoroughly for it. So you have it in your head. This is your activity, and you can plan it and you can play it with the students. Another one which is very famous is noughts and crosses, and here we have 9 squares. What you can do is, for each square, prepare one task for the students, depending on what they have learned, or what you assume that they've learned, or something that you think will be helpful for them. For example, you can review, like for each square you can have a question like what's the opposite of big? Small. Okay, or what's the opposite if you want to review the opposite? So what's the opposite of rich? All right, something like that. You can if you're not sure which things to prepare, which questions to prepare, open the course book. You definitely have the course book, so open the course book and and find any gap fill exercise and choose one and read it out. So read out one slide, like one phrase. So I usually go a walk. Okay, so they need to figure out the preposition, right? All right. You can ask the question, so name 3 items of furniture, name 3 colors, name 3 animals or 3 domestic animals, depending on the level of the students, depending on the group you're teaching. But again, so this is maybe minimum preparation because you need to think about it beforehand. The way you play it is that you put the grid on the board, and first of all, and you divide the students into 2 teams, crosses and noughts. So then for each team you say, okay, so which square would you like? So crosses, you start, guys, so which square would you like to choose? They say, okay, 2B. All right, so this is your square, and this is the question for 2B is, what's the opposite of rich? And they say poor. All right, so that's your cross. If they don't answer the question, so the square is not there. So the opposite team has the right to win this square. All right, and they can play it like this. For each square, you ask a new question, and then you can see what happens. And in this case, so cross is 1. All right. Some of the activities that you can do is with pronunciation. This one actually is my favorite. It's called like, what's your phone number? And it's from, I think it's from teachingenglish.org.uk. Brilliant website. And in this case, what we have, like, what do you see? You see that like for each number, they have minimal pairs. Now, big, bat, but, boat, wood, but, bait, beat, bird, bart. So you say, okay, my phone number is, write it down, okay, bait, beat, bird, wood, but, boat, bit, bat, bet, okay? So what's my phone number? And now they can try to, like, the fun thing is that if you work in the same, so if they all from the same country, they can actually call each other to figure out whether they were right or wrong. So this is one of the example, and you can use like 2 or 3 minimal pairs in these particular situations. So, but there should be like a couple of 2 or 3 words that they sound the same, but the students may have problems with. Another pronunciation activity that helps your students is, of course, using tongue twisters. However, they can get tired of them. You may forget some of the tongue twisters, and why not try asking the students write one of the tongue twisters themselves? So what you do is you can divide them into groups and select 2 problematic sounds for your students. So in this case, it can be v, w sound, and then ask each group to write as many words as possible with these sounds. Set the time limit, but at least 3 words should be verbs, 3 adjectives, 3 nouns, 3 adverbs. Yeah. For example, it can be walk, whistle, very wavy, whiskey, very worrying, severely. They can be like these sounds, like v or w, can be at the beginning of the word, in the middle of the word, at the end of the word. It doesn't matter. So as long as the words contain them, that's what's important. After that, you can ask the students, each group, to make a sentence using as many words from the list as possible. They can add some little words like and for like prepositions, maybe some prepositions, articles, or some small words, and you'll be surprised with the final result, because the students would end up writing their own tongue twister. If you have 2 or 3 groups, you can ask them to write the tongue twisters on the board. They can vote for the best one, and you can drill the best one, and they can just like walk out of the classroom learning something new and something that they created. But if you have like, or you can drill all 3 tongue twisters and work with them, because this will be really, really helpful for them. So what zero preparation activities do you use in your lessons? Let's talk about it in a minute. Some other thing is that if you want to start your own library of emergency resources, you can find a lot of useful materials on Gallery Teachers workshops. with continuous professional developments. There's a library of workshops. There is a beautiful blog that you can read and find out a lot of ideas and materials for your lessons. And there is also a students forums that you can participate in and share your ideas with your peers. Teaching English with limited resources means when you have pretty much something to write with and something to write on. So usually limited resources are like when you have a whiteboard or blackboard and a board pen to write with. What I will be talking about in my workshop is teaching with zero preparation materials. So the materials that require and resources that require zero preparation or almost no preparation. We need zero preparation activities because in a lot of situations, newly qualified teachers spend ages for preparing for their lessons. And usually when they work for a big company, they need to substitute some classes, and they are not quite sure, like they are in a situation when they're not sure which class they're going to teach, who they're going to work with. Or there can be situations when their photocopier breaks down, or when the electricity is not there, and the internet doesn't work. So in all these situations, it's really, really helpful especially for newly qualified teachers, to have a set of activities, like what we call emergency activities, that they can use in any situations with all levels, and still can make the students learn something from these activities. Yes, teachers need to prepare for lessons when using zero preparations activities. It's a must, because every teacher needs to understand the aim of their lesson, what they're going to, and how to get there. And they need to have a clear idea in their head. So what kind of lesson they want to teach, whether it's a reading lesson, whether it's a listening lesson, whether it's a grammar lesson, or like a functional language lesson, a vocabulary lesson. We use zero preparation activities just to supplement your usual lesson, your ordinary lesson, and maybe to help you to make your lessons more relevant to the group of learners you're working with. And also there are some situations when you need to respond to your learners. Maybe some activities do not work, or the students need a break from reading, or they need some sort of physical activity so that they will be able to do the listening task better. So for this, you can use any zero preparation activities so that the students can be more involved during the lesson.